it actually could become counterproductive just to read a chapter in the book of Proverbs. Another good practice could be is to read a proverb that stands alone and then just think about it to try to get a better understanding of what the picture is that the author is using. Because it's so brief, you have to kind of fill in some of the blanks. You have to kind of think through things and ask yourself some questions about it. There's several different kinds of parallelism in Hebrew. The most common is when you have two lines that are saying this, they're both making the same point, just in two different ways. Or they're making the same point in opposite ways. So you might get something about the wise man does this, but the fool does that, for example. I've got some examples we'll look at. Those are the two main forms of parallelism that we find. There's some other ones, if-then type statements, or these four things are great, but this fifth thing is even more wonderful. Or there's six things that are great, and the seventh is more wonderful. So there are some different ones like that, different kinds like that. So we'll look at a couple of examples here. So this is from Proverbs 11:25. Now I'm using colors, and I hope that it works okay. But Proverbs 11:25 says, "Whoever brings blessing will be enriched, and the one who waters will himself be watered." Okay, so here's Proverb 11:25. These are two statements which are saying the same thing. They have the same point. And I put in color the parts that are in parallel with each other. So whoever and the one who obviously is in parallel, but the one who brings blessing. So what does it mean to bring a blessing? Now there's the old song, "Make me a blessing," but what does it mean to bring blessing? You can say, well, I'm not sure. Well, what's the next line say? The one who waters. So who knows about watering? Well, I think all of us do. Right? You're watering flowers, watering plants, you're watering gardens, you're watering your fields. I mean, we all water something. Well, what's the point of watering plant? Okay, keep it alive, make it grow. So well, we had vegetables here at break, right? If you're watering a pepper plant, why would you water a pepper plant? Right, because you want to eat peppers. You want the plant to stay alive, to be healthy, to grow, so it'll produce fruit, in this case a vegetable, that you can eat. The one who waters will himself be watered. We spend the time, we make the investment, because at the end of the day, what happens? We benefit from it. Now, that example seems a little almost selfish, right? It's, okay, I'm taking care of this plant not because this plant has value in and of itself and I need to, but I'm getting something out of it. So now we take that idea, we go back to the first line. Well, whoever brings a blessing. Well, how do you bring a blessing? What situation are we talking about where you're bringing a blessing? Yeah, you're doing good for somebody else. Now, if you're bringing it, the idea is you're bringing it to that person. The idea is that you perhaps prepared it. Perhaps you put some work into it, some thought. It might be, something simple, like, a card for somebody or flowers for somebody. It could be something else. In this case, the actual idea is financial. So enriched is actually a good translation there. But it's not like, well, I'm giving you money so you give me more money. Okay. But the idea is giving is better than receiving, But what the proverb is teaching is, in order to receive a blessing, you have to be giving a blessing. And there's other proverbs that are similar to this. If a man wants to have friends, he must show himself friendly, which is very similar to this concept. So we look at the parallels, and if we don't necessarily understand one, well, we look at the other one, and then we see how they relate to each other. But we also have to be aware that we're not saying, well, I'll just give to this person so I get something back. But it is saying you will get something back. And we learn from other scriptures what that means. It's better to give than to receive. So this is one example. I think I have another example here. So Proverbs 10:1, a wise son makes a glad father, but, so here's a contrast, a foolish son is a sorrow to his mother. Now, we had our daughters memorize this verse when they were very little, and of course they aren't sons, they're daughters, and they didn't know what I think American Standard Version is what we were using at the time, and it said a grief to his mother, and well, what does a small child know about being a grief to somebody? So we had to change it a little bit, but it was okay. So here's the contrast. You have a wise son and you have a foolish son. You have a glad father and you have a sorrowing mother. Okay, so that's the difference. A wise son, if a son is wise, the result is his father will be glad about the fact that his son is wise. Right? If a son is foolish, his mother is going to be sad about the fact that her son is foolish. Now, I won't ask the mothers in the room, does anybody here have a foolish son? But in life, we kind of understand a little bit of how this works. So there's a situation where a son, a father said to a son, look, you're not being responsible. Teenage son. Well, what teenage son is responsible? Okay. You're not being responsible. You need to get a car so you can get yourself to work. Okay, fine. Well, the son isn't real happy about this ultimatum, and okay, maybe the father could have presented it better or whatever, but this is the situation. So the son goes out and he buys himself a car, and he brings it home to show his dad. Look, you told me to go buy a car, I did. Well, he bought a little red sports car. Not a dependable work car. And so is the father happy about this? No. You're still being foolish because you didn't make any wise judgment when it came to buying a car. So like what, you buy this just to spite me, because you told me to buy a car? I'll buy a car. All right. And you're not going to like it. Right? That's the foolish son. So what happens? What's the result of that? Is there's the relationship it breaks down, and so now again, a proverb is a general truth. Just because the son is wise doesn't mean the father is going to be glad about it. Any of us could probably point anecdotally to situations where we're like, well, look at this son, he's like this, but the father doesn't care, the father's not glad about it, the father might even not be happy, father might even be mad about it in some cases. But as a general rule, this is the right relationship. When we speak to our children and we say, you know what makes me happy? If you would be wise. That's what makes me happy. Not that you make money, not that you're good at school, not, those things are all important, but they are secondary to your relationship to wisdom. So this is a little bit about the parallelism that we'll see once we get into the proverb collections, and we'll talk about. So I think this is the last slide. Yeah. Oh, we're right on time. So this is in your handout as well, only perhaps tweaked a little bit just because of space, but the purpose of the book of Proverbs is to create in us an unquenchable desire for God's wisdom. Now, if we have an unquenchable desire for God's wisdom, we will gain in wisdom. But as we'll see in Proverbs 1, verse 2, the book of Proverbs gives wisdom to the wise. So we never exhaust wisdom. We should always be growing in wisdom. And so because the wise person can gain wisdom, it means that we never get to the end. So it's an unquenchable desire. And it's God's wisdom that we're after. It's not man's wisdom that we're after, it's God's wisdom. So sometimes we have to take man's wisdom and compare it to God's wisdom to see if it's okay, and figure out whether we need to throw it out or whether God's wisdom, says it's okay, but that's all part of being wise. But we always go to it from God's wisdom. We always go to it from His perspective. And so that's the starting point. And of course, we'll talk about the fear of the Lord next week, Lord willing. That's it. And I think I put one, I did. I quoted from Proverbs 4:23 in your handout. And we'll just close with this. Which I don't have a very good memory, so that's why I have to look this up. Proverbs 4:23 says, "Keep your heart with all vigilance." And I think the King James might have been with all diligence. "Keep your heart with all vigilance, for from it flows the springs of life," or the issues of life. I think the King James might have said, "For out of it are the issues of life." This is the goal of Proverbs, is that the focus on the heart is throughout the book of Proverbs, and it's throughout